Riverside.
What up, everybody? Hello, L's and G's. It is time for another edition of the 4-1 podcast. I got not CFP Insider Roberto with me, so that's awesome. Welcome. Fancy Trash Can was unable to record in time for the Friday deadline, so I'm going to record with not CFP Insider Roberto here. We're going to drop this for you, well, today, as you're listening to it. It is Thursday for us now. You're in the future. And, and then we'll get you another episode next week with Captain Boring and Fancy Trash Can. So, first of all, not CFP Insider Roberto, how's it going?
It's going good. Just patiently waiting for the beginning of the season, waiting for more news.
Are we, we're kind of, we've got to be like at 95 days, 94 days?
Yeah, mid-90s somewhere.
Yeah, mid-90s somewhere. All right, well, we'll figure that out along the way. As you know, we're just podcasts on the interwebs. We got a great show for you today. Over the next hour or so, 40 minutes, I don't know however long this takes, we're going to annoy your ear holes with our voices, maybe some sound bites, since I am in charge of them this time. But why don't we, Robert, just start with some news. Chris Del Conte is the Texas athletic director. For those of you who didn't know, he is in favor of a 9-game schedule. Mostly because the Oklahoma-Texas game is at a neutral site. And then Greg said he was talking to boosters or whatever. And then Greg Sankey came along and said, well, that's an interesting argument for it. This just they're not going to a 9-game conference schedule in 24 when they do join, Robert. This is just SEC dragging their feet, wanting to play cupcakes in late November, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every other college plays the cupcakes in the beginning of the season, which is fine. They're your tune-up games, get everything ready, get everyone cohesive, but there's no reason to be playing, like, New Mexico State or someone of lesser value in a week before, like, your rivalry game.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really pointless. But it will make it easier for Texas and Oklahoma. Now, Chris Del Conte, I think he just wants it for the revenue, right? He just wants that extra home game because he's losing one to Oklahoma.
Right.
All right. Let's jump here to another section here. That's my soundbite for jumping in between topics on the 10-minute sports report, for those of you wondering, which no one really asks. Okay, the Holiday Bowl, which is played in St. Diego, is suing UCLA, more importantly, the state of California and the regions that oversee the universities of California, so that's UCLA and USC. Holiday Bowl is suing those two things for a minimum of $3 million. Why, you might ask? Because COVID's a bitch and still biting people in the ass. UCLA backed out of the Holiday Bowl in 2021, so that would have been at the end of the 2020 season over COVID concerns, and Holiday Bowl still wants their share. Thoughts on that?
I mean, if the game doesn't happen, if the game doesn't happen with them in it, then you shouldn't have to pay it. And it's not like they're the only college that would have backed out of a bowl game. And it's not like they're a very important bowl.
They're not even. I don't think they're even the only college to back out of a bowl game that year. I'm pretty sure.
It happens. Like, that's, and it's not like they did it. Okay, so they said COVID concerns. Whether that's actually what it was or not, that's. But I mean, if that's the excuse that they're giving, I mean, that's a pretty legitimate excuse given the time.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also say that I'm sure that the whole state of California has got to be very poor by now. So everyone's just looking to get a piece of the pie for anything involved. any way that they can. They'll probably settle on the $3 million, right? Like some booster's going to write some check, or the state of California will pay that. Something's got to happen. I mean, USC and UCLA are about to walk into this big new TV deal with the Big Ten.
TV deal.
Yeah, TV deal. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we will probably cover that. Fancy Trash Can and I will cover that in a later episode or later this summer. I also covered it on the 10-Minute Sports Report. Kevin Warren, basically, long story short, said that a lot of money was going places, and it turns out that may not be the case, right? Like, they may have to pay a lot. So I'll leave it at that. If you want more, go follow us on Instagram at 4th and 1 Podcast. Send us a DM. Comment down on this video below. If you want more info on that, I'll be happy to send whoever or talk with whoever or post a video, a longer video explaining it. All right, let's move on. ESPN has announced their times for opening weekend. Opening weekend will begin Thursday, August 31st, and run through Labor Day, and it will finish with Clemson and Duke, and I got the perfect one.
Because it's garbage!
For that. That's going to be so trash. So, let's get through it. Thursday night, Robert, we better ask off of work because it's going to be a doozy. Florida at Utah, 8 p.m., ESPN. Level of excitement, 1 to 10.
I mean, that's considering it's the very beginning and you're starting off with that game, it's got to be a 10. Especially with how the game ended last year.
Oh, yeah.
And with the fact that the implications on the game itself are pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll kind of get into some of my questions later. Kind of get into Florida and Utah. So that's going to be 8 p.m. Thursday night, ESPN. There will be other games that night. However, none of them are really big. Like that's the biggest one on that Thursday. Week 0 is also kind of weak. I would say the biggest game in week 0, which is Saturday the 26th, the week before, is Navy at Notre Dame. And, I mean, we're always down for some Notre Dame losing to Navy, but that's a big task for a Navy team that was really bad last year. All right. Other games on that 31st, Nebraska, Minnesota, that time has still yet to be announced. I'm sure that will be on Fox or FS1. That'll be a good one. All around. All right, let's skip ahead to Friday. Friday, 7:30, ESPN for their primetime matchup. You can either watch on ESPN Plus Howard take on Eastern Michigan, or on ESPN at 7:30, you could take on Louisville at Georgia Tech. Level of excitement for Louisville at Georgia Tech.
2.
2, yeah. I think I'm more intrigued than you are about Jeff Brom being at Louisville, the old Purdue head coach. I think it could be fun. Louisville's kind of right in that region in Kentucky, right there by the Carolinas, where they can get some good athletes, but they're not going to get cream of the crop. So it's going to be a bunch of 2 and 3 stars that Brom's going to have to elevate, and he didn't do that at Purdue. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech's just a complete dumpster fire. All right. Let's go ahead to Saturday. Noon o'clock, ABC, Virginia at Tennessee.
I think I'm more excited. I would say that's probably around like a 6-7.
Okay.
I'm excited because that's like the first game Virginia's back from everything that happened last season.
Okay.
And then it's always exciting to watch Tennessee play.
Yeah.
See how Joe Milton does.
Joe Milton and that Josh Heupel offense. Also at noon on ESPN, Arkansas State, Oklahoma. I'm just messing with you. Don't
I was going to say, I mean, like maybe a 2.
Don't answer that. No. I'm messing with you. 3:30 ESPN, UMass and Auburn. Again, just messing with you. Please don't.
10. Perfect 10.
UMass was so bad. How, like, ESPN is scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, they're going to full contract next year with the SEC, right? So they're going to have more SEC games this year. But UMass was 1-11 last year. They were so bad. So bad. And, I mean, Auburn can walk
the schedule.
in there. It's so bad. Okay, 3:30 ESPN, Boise State at Washington.
That one, I think it's actually going to be a pretty decent game.
Yeah.
So I would say my 6, 5,
Okay.
6.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's a premier matchup, but it's still a matchup where you could probably see some high scoring.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I have a question about Washington later for you, so get ready for that. The primetime matchup on ESPN, so this is the 7 p.m. start, New Mexico and Texas A&M. Oh, my goodness. I really do feel bad for ESPN because the SEC scheduling is not great, and they want to put these SEC teams in prime time, and they just
But-
can't with this schedule.
Do you put Texas A&M on upset alert, though?
Against New Mexico?
They did lose to Appalachian State.
It's New Mexico.
Yeah.
You and me could walk into New Mexico and beat New Mexico.
Yeah, but you never know.
Okay. The 7:30 ESPN with Herbie and Fowler, and I'm sure this is where game day will end up, as we actually talked off air a couple days ago, a week ago. North Carolina, South Carolina. This will be a Bank of America Stadium, so neutral site game. I'm excited for this. I think this is a lot of points, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the excitement's there for it because you're starting off with a rivalry game, and it could be some, Spencer Rattler. This could be like his big, like the big coming out for him.
Also at that time, okay, which game gets more viewership? North Carolina, South Carolina, 7:30 ABC. 7:30 NBC is West Virginia at Penn State.
I think the Penn State game will get more viewership
Just
just because it's Penn State.
It's gonna be that's gonna be raucous. That's gonna be a good game. And listen, I don't put it past West Virginia to go in there with actually a decent game plan and actually maybe win this thing, or at least try to keep it close.
I would love that.
That would be great. They made some coaching changes, offensive coordinator changes, changed the quarterback, so hopefully we can see a good game. On CBS at 7:30 again, the SEC, or actually this is the Big 12 this time, just screwing over these big time networks, is Texas Tech and Wyoming.
I mean, it's going to be a blowout. But-
It's Texas Tech at Wyoming.
I wonder how they worked that deal out.
I don't know, but this is why it is a CBS game, because CBS has Mountain West privileges. So that's why this is 7:30. So this is actually a Mountain West game technically. So actually, CBS did a really good job because they got a premier Mountain West game, right? If you look at it from that point of view.
I mean, technically, yeah.
10:30 that night. How late you gonna watch this one? Coastal Carolina at UCLA in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
If this was like 2 or 3 years ago, I would definitely stay up for it because Coastal Carolina was a lot better. I think they're starting to finally drop off, though. But, I mean, maybe get through close to halftime.
Yeah, it's a shame the Pac-12. They're just on so late.
Yeah.
Best thing that can happen in UCLA and USC is they're going to join the Big Ten and probably never play past 8 p.m. again, like Eastern time, that is.
Right.
Let's look at some Sunday matchups. So they are going full-blown Sunday. They're using all the time slots on Sunday since this is the week before NFL kickoff. So CBS has Northwestern Rutgers at noon. 3:30 is Oregon State San Jose State, and then ABC has the big one, and I think possibly game of the weekend, LSU, neutral site against Florida State, Camping World, so it's in Florida. Florida State made a rally and came back last year to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, that game could be what defines Florida State.
I have a question on Florida State later. I'm really high on Florida State this year. You sent me a thing. Their transfers this year are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Their returning starters are ridiculous. Jordan Travis, fifth-year quarterback, returning. Their pass rusher, whose name escapes me, he surprised. He was a top 5 draft pick, and he came back. So they're.
Oh, that's Verse.
Yes, Jared Verse. Yes, Jared Verse. So the Sunday night going into Monday, everyone has off Monday. That tune in 7:30 ABC because that could be the game of the weekend right there. And then finally Monday, the 4th, 8 o'clock, ESPN. Why does ESPN always pick a game that is just not going to be good? Clemson at Duke. Wallace Wade Stadium, so it's a Duke home game, but oh my goodness, come on.
I mean, that's just going to be... It's going to be a beatdown.
What do you think of Clemson this year? I mean, that's all I have, so I'm going to jump into our next segment here, but before I do that, what do you think of Clemson? We're going to Kyle Klubnik. Dabo's still there. A new offensive coordinator is Derek Riley, the TCU offensive coordinator. So we're going to go fast. We're going to throw the ball deep. It's going to power run inside zone. It's going to open up the offense a little bit. Defense has been great no matter who the DC is. Give me your thoughts on Clemson.
Well, the big thing with Clemson is, are they going to be able to score? Because that was what they struggled with last year, was scoring and turnovers. And if Klubnik can take care of the ball, I mean, that defense is good enough that they can win some games. It's just going to be, can they stay in the games long enough?
Yeah, last year's problem, as you touched on, Klubnik's going to have to be able to run the ball. Like, each coach has its identity of what he wants the offense deep down rooted in, right? Like Harbaugh, Michigan, we're both Michigan fans. Harbaugh wants to run the football. Like, if he's not running the football 30 times a game, then he's out of his element, and they're probably going to lose the game, right? Unless if the quarterback. Ryan Day wants to throw the football and make big plays down the field to score very quickly, right?
Right.
I feel like Dabo Swinney, his rooted offense is in the quarterback run game, and DJ Uiagalelei just did not want to do that.
Yeah.
And so when then you drop off in wide receivers as they did, once Trevor Lawrence left, this is what you get. Okay, let's go to a new segment. I don't even know if I have like a sound bite, but let's just pick one. Yeah. Oh yeah. New segment is true or false. So, how this is going to work. I'm going to ask Robert a whole bunch of true or false questions. He's going to tell me whether it's true or false and explain his reasoning to why it's true or false. Then I'm going to annoy our listeners more and finish up anything you didn't cover. All right. So, here. Wait. Yeah. All right. All right. Here we go. Alabama, true or false, Alabama will finish the year with 3 or more losses. And I have their schedule if you want it.
Yeah, just run down that for me.
Middle Tennessee State, Texas, South Florida. That's all their non-conference. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU. There's a bye in between those two games. Kentucky, Chattanooga, Cupcake, late November, and then Auburn.
I'm going to say true. I could see them losing to Texas, LSU, and then it's either going to be Ole Miss or it's going to be A&M. It's going to be one of those two. So, I mean, they very well could end up with 4, but I think Alabama has some serious issues this year, especially at quarterback, even though they got the transfer from Notre Dame.
Tyler
I just
Buchner.
I just think they're going to be in trouble this year.
Is this the beginning of the end of the Saban dynasty at Bama?
I think the beginning of the end was last year.
Okay. I don't really have anything else more to say. I'm going to also say true to that if anyone were asking me. I'm with you. I think the loss could come from Texas, as you said. I think it's going to come from Ole Miss, and I actually think Tennessee and LSU are going to get them again. I just think, for whatever reason, the offenses that Tennessee runs, Nick Saban will have trouble with, and his defenses are having trouble with of recent, and then LSU is just a rivalry game and anything happens there. Okay. Caleb Williams will win the Heisman Trophy again, going back-to-back for the first time since Archie Griffin in the 80s, I think.
I'm going to say true. They're just going to walk through the Pac-12. I don't think there's really any... He's going to get stuck with Stanford, Colorado, like all those other teams that, I mean, he's just going to do what he did last year. And I think they had like Drake May as like the number 2.
Right.
And I just don't see that happening.
Give me your top 5 Heisman finishers also.
So we'll go Caleb Williams. Drake May is going to be in the conversation. I think Corum could, depending on his season. Marv Harrison, and then I'm gonna throw Mbuka in there as well.
Oh, so 2 Ohio State wide receivers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like it. You actually touched on USC's schedule, which leads me into my next question. USC will be undefeated going into championship weekend. Schedule is as follows: San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, then a bye week, Arizona State, Colorado, Arizona, Notre Dame, Utah, California, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. So it's a very back-loaded schedule starting on the 14th of October.
I'm going to say false.
Okay.
And they're going to drop 2 in a row. They're going to drop 1 to Notre Dame.
Okay.
And they're going to drop 1 to Utah.
Okay, so one's on the road to Notre Dame, and then Utah's at home.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like that. And we'll get into this pack. I have more Pac-12 questions later, including one right now. Colorado will finish the season with 6 or less losses, and their schedule is as follows. It is TCU, Nebraska, that's the home opener, Colorado State, Oregon, USC, Arizona State, Stanford, UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona, Washington State, Colorado. Or, I'm sorry, Utah. They are Colorado.
I'm going to say false.
So they're going... Okay, so you're expecting more than 6 losses.
I'm expecting more than 6 losses. I'm expecting somewhere maybe 8, 9 losses.
Okay. I've touched on other episodes how you're not real big on Colorado. I'm not real big on Colorado. I don't think you can go in and turn over your entire, or literally let half of your scholarship players just leave, or kick them off the team, or tell them to leave, and be successful. Your starters might be okay for a hot minute, but you have no depth behind them. And I believe that there is something to be said. When you're trying to rebuild a program, you need those kids that's been with the program at the worst, because they will drive the force to only get better when things are still going bad.
Right. Here's a question for you.
Yeah, okay.
So, with everyone that was leaving Colorado, do you think that's why Shiloh committed to Colorado? Do you think Deion called Shiloh and was like, hey, you might need to come?
Shiloh's his other son?
Yeah.
And what position does he play?
I don't remember. But I saw that he just came
I can look at
earlier in the week.
I think
Safety.
Yeah, I do. I think Deion expected more kids to just want to come to Colorado because he was there. Right, so he was making all this room for all these kids, and now everyone's like, that's not how this is going to work. I see right through that and not going, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I do. Because originally he said that he was bringing Shedeur, but his brother wasn't good enough to come. Now all of a sudden Shiloh's good enough to come.
Right.
That's not how that works. All righty. Texas will finally produce on expectations and win the Big 12. Schedule: Rice, Alabama, Wyoming, Baylor, Kansas, Oklahoma, Houston. Remember, Houston, BYU the next week are joining the Big 12 this year. Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State, and Texas Tech.
I think they do. I think it's true. I think they finally get over that hump, because the big game is the Oklahoma game. They win that one, they pretty much have the inside track.
I am going to say, I'm actually going to agree with you and actually say true as well. Sark's just too good, right? You have 2 top 5 overall quarterbacks on your roster. You always have the athletes. Yeah, you're losing Bijan, but your offensive line is going to be better. At some point, this is just going to click. And I think Sark is finally building this program the right way, not listening to boosters and kind of just doing his thing. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say true. However, Kansas State, I think, is a force to be reckoned with. For whatever reason, Chris Kleiman is the former coach at North Dakota State. He's just got them rolling right now. Don't let the middle of the country get rolling, because then they'll dominate everything as we see in NFL. All right, here's a controversial one for you. Georgia will not repeat as SEC East champions. Tennessee Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, at Tennessee, Georgia Tech.
Is Florida in the East?
Florida's in the East, and it's a neutral site game in Jacksonville.
I'm going to say true, because I think this is going to be the year Florida finally comes back. I think Florida is going to be... I think they'll win that portion of the SEC.
I can't even remember their coach's name. He used to be at Louisiana. Oh, my goodness. Florida. I'm going to know it when I hear it. Florida football head coach. Billy Napier. So he's going to get it done, you think. Again, I'm going to go false as well. Or I'm going to go true. They will not repeat. as SEC East champions. I'm going to say, though, Tennessee.
Okay.
Tennessee or South Carolina. I really like what Shane Beamer's doing. They finished really hot last year. They get Georgia early as well. And I feel like if you're going to knock off the King, you better get to him early in the schedule rather than late.
Right.
All right. Here, you're going to love this one as soon as I pull it up. Ohio State will not be in the college football playoff conversation come November. I'm going to read their schedule to you up until November. So first week of November, the first 4 get released. Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky. We know what's going to happen there. Here's where it gets interesting. Notre Dame, Maryland, at Purdue, Penn State, Wisconsin, and then Rutgers would be the game right before the schedule is, or right before the rankings are released.
Okay, and it was true if they're not going to be.
So true or false, Ohio State will not be in the college football playoff conversation come November.
I'm going to say true. I think they're dropping one to Notre Dame.
Okay.
And it's either going to be Penn State or Wisconsin. They're going to drop one of those two. And by losing those two, that's going to put them somewhere in like the teens, probably 18.
Yeah. Probably highest is 12, depending on how everything else plays out. I agree. It doesn't get much. It gets a little easier. After Rutgers, it goes to Michigan State at home. That's probably a win. Then Minnesota at home. That's probably a win. And then it's on the road against Big Blue in the Big House. And that kind of leads me into my next question. Michigan is the Big Ten's best chance to make the college football playoff.
I'm going to say false.
Okay.
And the reason behind it is I think Penn State is going to be sneaky this year. It's either Penn State or Michigan. One of those two is going to run this table. And I think it's going to come down to the matchup between Michigan and Penn State. The winner of that one, I think, is going to end up as your Big Ten leader.
So that game's November the 11th. Michigan's games before and after are as follows. East Carolina, that's on Peacock, by the way. See, the NBC knows how to do it. Puts the crap games on the streaming services. UNLV, Bowling Green. Michigan should, as long as they don't Michigan, be 3-0 with a average scoring margin of 50.5. Rutgers, Nebraska, that's at night, probably a home game for the Cornhuskers. Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue. Then they get Penn State, and that's on the road, but that's at noon,
right.
Which is we dodged a bullet there. Maryland's on the road, and then Ohio State's at home. I'm also going to agree with you, but I'm going to agree for a different team, and they're going to come. I have a question about them, and they're going to come a little later, so I'm going to save it until I get to that question. But I think November the 11th, circle it. Michigan's got a Michigan at some point, and we both know that, and we both feel it. Maybe we're in a different era, and we're just not going to realize it until it's finally over. But at some point, something's going to happen. Simeon thinks J.J. McCarthy's set up for a Heisman run. He probably is. But he right now has the tendency to be a gunslinger when they let him throw a lot, and he throws a lot of interceptions, and that could get in his way. All right. So let me go to the next question. Man, I did actually set these up perfectly. So, My next question is, Wisconsin will finish the season with 3 or less losses.
True.
Okay. This is my sneaky team to make the college football playoff out of the Big Ten. I actually think that Wisconsin has the best shot because of how bad the West is specifically. They're getting Buffalo, Washington State, at Washington State, so that could be a tough game for them. Then Georgia Southern. Then it's Purdue, Rutgers, Iowa. That decides the West on October 14th.
Yeah.
Illinois, Ohio State at home, Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska at home, and Minnesota. Let's review. Luke Fickell's coming off back-to-back great seasons at Cincinnati and is a defensive-minded coach and was a head coach and a longtime defensive coordinator at Ohio State, so he knows the Big Ten. Their problem was quarterback play and offense. They went out and got North Carolina's offensive coordinator, which the name is escaping me right now, who installed an air raid offense. They also brought in Tanner Mordecai, who's from SMU, an air raid offense. They brought in 4 new wide receivers, all from air raid offense systems. So you are basically getting a brand new, already put together air raid offense. Braden Allen, who is a monster and could run for 2,000 yards this year, and a defense that was really good last year. They went 7-6 last year after firing their coach at 2-3.
Yeah, I mean, at most, I think they finish with 1 loss, and it could be Ohio State, could be Iowa, could be one of those two, depending on if Iowa decides they're going to throw the ball. But, I mean, I guess
actually
the hard part is their schedule strength, though.
It's a decent schedule. I'm gonna give you one. I actually think they dropped the game to Rutgers, and that's it. So
like preparing, looking ahead to Iowa.
Looking ahead to Iowa, they're going to get Iowa at home. That could be at night. That game could either be a big noon kickoff or at night, depending on what else is going on that weekend. Then they lose to Rutgers. They just hammer Iowa at home. Then they play a close game to Illinois on the road, and that's going to be a sleepy noon game, I think. And then they get Ohio State, which is a close win at home.
I mean, could they lose the one to Illinois, coming off of a big win from Iowa, looking ahead to Ohio State, dropping the one away?
So let me ask you this question. I just came up with this one right now. The winner of the Big Ten, East or West, will have 2 losses but still be in the college football playoff conversation.
I'm going to say false because I don't think they're going to be in the conversation.
Either team.
Either team. At 2 losses, with it being the last time that it's going to be 4 teams, I think they're going to... With 2 losses, I think they're going to be sitting just on the outside at like 7, 8, to where they would actually need a lot to happen in order for them to get in. So I guess they would be in the conversation, but like they're not in the conversation.
I like that answer a lot, and I think the point you just made with this being the last year, it's the 4 teams. The committee is really going to hunk down and be like, you know what? 2 losses is oh my goodness, something just fell. 2 losses is probably going to get you most teams in now going forward. So we're going to make sure this year it's 1 or undefeated.
Right.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think of that. All right. So you got a bonus one there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on. The game on September 23rd between Florida State and Clemson will decide the Atlantic Division in the ACC.
Yeah, I think that's true because I think I think Florida State's going to be the team to win the Atlantic, let alone the whole ACC. But other than Clemson, who else is out there?
What you have North Carolina, I think. Here, so this is Florida State's schedule. Follow-up question to this as well is, true or false, Florida State will make the college football playoff. Schedule is as follows: LSU, Southern Miss, Boston College, Clemson, as we talked about. Then it's Vatech, Syracuse, Duke, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh. You could throw Miami in there for you as another potential. You're shaking your head no. North Alabama, and then Florida to finish off the season. So answer my question first. Florida State college football playoff, yes or no?
True, yes. I think so.
Second question, why not Miami?
Because we play this game with Miami every single year. Miami will go and they'll either win 1 or 2 games at the beginning of the season, and even a month before the season starts, they will talk about how great Miami's going to be. It's going to be the return of Miami. Watch out for Miami. They play 2 games, and then they'll start off unranked. And then they'll have Miami win 2 games, and all of a sudden they're like number 7. And then they go and they lose a game, just like a very disgusting game. And then it's like, that's it. They're out of the top 25. There's no more talking about Miami. And then they lose 4 games after that. And then they finish kind of like mediocrely. And it's like, well, there's Miami.
So it's very interesting you say that. So I pulled up their schedule. I'm trying to see who they lost to someone last year. It must not be on here. Anyway, here's their schedule this year. It's Miami of Ohio. And here's the game that's going to get them all the buzz. You ready for this? Texas A&M in week 2 at Miami. That's the game right there, as you said. They're going to win that game. They're going to probably, my guess is it's at home. It's at 3:30. It's hot. It's humid. Texas A&M has no idea what hit them in the mouth, and they're going to look good. And then it's Bethune-Cookman, I think, where Ed Reed was supposed to be coached, right?
Yeah.
And then it's Temple, Georgia Tech. I think that they run the table, and they're looking awesome, and they're right where you said, right? They're super high ranked. They're probably 7, 8 in the country. And then they got to go to North Carolina, which I think is a loss because, well, North Carolina I think is going to be pretty good this year with Drake May. But the next week is Clemson at home. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, Clemson walks in there and just shellacks them at home.
Yeah, they've done this the past like 3 years. They make a big deal about this Clemson-Miami game, and then Miami doesn't even come within like a sniff of winning this game.
I love it.
And it's like, oh, well, glad we wasted an 8 o'clock time slot for this game.
Remember that one time, I don't even know who was the coach. They put it on at noon, and it was Deshaun Watson, and it was 59-0 or something like that was the final. There were like 12 people in the stands. It was 120 degrees because it was before they put the roof, the covering on it, like the awning almost on the Hard Rock Stadium. Yeah. So it was like 120 degrees with humidity. There were 12 people in the stands. Miami fired their coach not even at the end of the day. I remember before the 8 o'clock game, the head coach of Miami was fired. Was it Pete Golding? Was that era maybe? Oh my goodness. It's so. But no, you're right. The story with Miami every year is they'll look great because they'll have one great win and a whole bunch of not great wins. They're pulling an SEC or a Big Ten sort of when they do this. And then when it's time to get down and dirty, they just fall apart.
Let me give you great. The last 4 times Clemson and Miami have played each other.
Yes, do it. Do it.
2015, Clemson walks into Miami, beats them 58-0.
That's the game I'm
Okay.
talking about. Yep. Yep.
2017, Miami's riding high, ACC championship game. They're gonna beat down Clemson. Absolutely. Clemson wins 38-3.
I love this.
2020, games in Clemson again. Miami's probably riding high again, ready to just beat on Clemson. They lose 42-17. 2022, once again, Miami running strong, getting ready to just bring another hurricane to South Carolina. They lose 40-10. Like, it's the same script over and over again.
That is the most hard-hitting journalism that has ever appeared on this show, and it's absolutely right. Like, the level, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. Like, at what point are we supposed to be like, oh, no, Miami and Clemson, that's going to be a good game, right? Maybe
Right.
it's this year. Maybe if enough people get on board finally and it's like, Clemson's got this, maybe then it'll be a great game, but on paper. I just want to go back to Clemson real quick because you said Florida State, yes, is going to make the college football playoff. Clemson would be the other option in the ACC, right? It's between those two squads. Their schedule is Duke, of course, Charleston Southern, Florida Atlantic. Yuck. And then it's Florida State. By the way, that game's at home for them. Syracuse, Wake Forest, Miami, North Carolina State, which always gives them fits, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, UNC, South Carolina. The middle of that schedule is not great, which is why I gave the edge to Florida State, because they could theoretically almost go every other game with a loss. They could win Florida State or lose Florida State, win Syracuse, lose to Wake Forest, win Miami, lose to North Carolina State, win and until I get as we talked about, until I see that their offense is kind of back to producing on a level that is quality, I just don't think it's going to happen. All right. Here's a good one for you. A newcomer will win the AAC. The newcomers are Rice, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, UAB, North Texas, and UTSA. Departing are Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF.
Part of me wants to say true because the AAC really isn't that good. And UTSA's program right now is running very well. But I also don't know how Tulane's going to be this year.
What, did they lose their quarterback? They lost their running back.
Yeah.
I think they lost their quarterback, but they still have the head coach. And the AAC has been a conference that teams go from middle of the pack. They're really bad, middle of the pack the next year, and then they win it as Tulane, as Cincinnati kind of do. So what I want to do real quick here, and I want to take a very fast detour, is look at the teams who finished middle of the pack last year. And as soon as my phone loads, here it is. Oh my goodness. No, I don't want the whole thing. Awesome. Oh wait, top 25. Here it is. American. All right, standings. Here we go. All right, so finished middle of the pack last year. SMU, Houston, Navy, Eastern Carolina, and Memphis all kind of finished middle of the pack last year. Tulane was 7-1. UCF and Cincinnati both are gone at 6-2. So it's SMU, Houston, Navy, East Carolina, and Memphis. Are any of those teams making a run?
I feel like SMU usually makes a run midway through the year. Like they always go 5-0, 6-0. But then they never actually finish strong. Memphis is always the team that wins a random late season game under the lights. East Carolina probably could, but I don't really have much confidence in like that middle of the pack.
So East Carolina did finish 8-5 last year, won 2 games. East Carolina struggled in conference play. So East Carolina kind of is getting paid, hopefully, to get beat up by our Michigan Wolverines. So it's really going to be how they start the season. So, did you answer my question, true or false? Newcomer's going to win it or not?
I'm going to say true.
Okay. All right. Which one?
I'm thinking UTSA.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
Roadrunners.
no. I think that's a good pick. I think the Roadrunners are a Texas school that is going to do very, very well because their program's already up and running. James Madison will, and I got to put this in air quotes, repeat as champions of the Sun Belt and be the highest group of 5 team. So, 2 separate questions. They will repeat as champions. Remember, they made the jump from FCS to FBS, so they were technically ineligible, but they would have won their side of the division last year. So, they will repeat as champions. That's first question. True or false?
I'm going to say false. I'm going to say that they caught everyone off guard last year because I think a lot of teams didn't expect much from them.
Okay.
So they kind of just like walked into the games. But I think it's going to be just your normal like dogfight through most of it. You know, Appalachian State's going to still hang around. Coastal Carolina's still going to hold around. Troy's going to hang around. I think it's going to be between one of those 4, but I think it'll end up being Appalachian State to lose.
Okay. They do play Appalachian State November 18th. Could be a game day location. Game day likes to go to kind of the lower level, in quotation, games late in the season. So that is the 18th, so right before a rivalry weekend. Okay. So the highest then, so James Madison, you're saying false, won't repeat as Sun Belt champion, so they're not going to be the highest group of 5 team. Who is going to get that New Year's 6 bid and be the highest group of 5 team?
Boise State.
So Boise State resurrect in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I like it. Let's just look up Boise State's schedule real quick, shall we? Because I have nothing better to do. Boise State football schedule. Here we go. It is as follows. They start off with at Washington. We both said we're excited for that game. UCF, North Dakota, and then it's San Diego State, Memphis, San Jose State, Colorado State, Wyoming, Fresno State, New Mexico, Utah State, and Air Force. Front of that schedule is kind of difficult, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they get past Washington, I mean, kind of look out at that point because then, other than San Diego State, I mean, they probably could run that table. I mean, UCF will put that could be a good one too, but I think they get past that first 4. I mean,
don't come at me with San Diego State, okay? All you got to do is just pass the football against Brady Hoke, and he won't know what to do, okay? he just pass the football, and he'll be like, what is this? Oh my goodness, I do not like that man at all. Alrighty, Washington will win the Pac-12.
that's false.
Who's going to win the Pac-12?
Utah.
All right, well, now I got to look. Do I have a question on Utah? I don't have a question on Utah. So I'm going to look up Utah's schedule because I didn't expect you to say Utah. I expected you to say yes. All right, fine. All right. Okay, Washington went 11-2 last year, and Michael Penix is a beast. And Michael Penix might be in my Heisman top 5. Utah, Florida at home, Baylor on the road, Weber State, UCLA, Oregon State, California, USC on the road, Oregon at home, Arizona State, Washington on the road, Arizona, and then Colorado. I'm looking at 1, 2, at least 3 losses here.
Yeah, it very well. Oh wait, hold on. I just did something. Very well could be, but have you looked at Washington's schedule in the same instance?
You know what? No, I haven't. I'm just making wild accusations with no way to prove it. Hang on, I'm pulling it up. No, I don't want their 2022 schedule. I want their 2023 schedule. Why can't Google just automatically go to the... Okay, here's Washington's for the people at home and the radio listeners. Boise State, we've covered this. Tulsa, Michigan State. I'll give it to you. California, Arizona, Oregon, Arizona State, Stanford, USC, Utah, Oregon State, and then Washington State. I'm looking at 2 losses, maybe.
The 3 games, other than, like, I think the Michigan State game could potentially, it's at Michigan State, it's at a weird time, 5 o'clock on Peacock, so it's kind of like one of those things.
That's a big time game with 2 big time teams to throw on Peacock, but okay.
So then you're at USC. You could potentially lose that one. Then you get Utah at home, and then you have to go out to, what is it, Corvallis, Oregon State?
Corvallis, yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, those 3 games in a row right before having to play your rival. Like, those 4 games very well could just knock Washington right out of it.
Do you know that their head coach has only, being a head coach in FBS football, has only ever lost 5 games?
I mean, it's about to be 9.
The confidence level is just dripping off of not CFP insider Roberto. Michigan State will be thinking long and hard about firing Mel Tucker at the end of the season.
I mean, that's about as true as it can get. If they do as bad as they did last year.
Okay, but that's... I understand that, but that's not if they do as bad. This is... You think that's true?
Yeah.
Okay, they're paying him, what, $95 million over 10 years? So
the only way that they wouldn't be is if they are really looking at the dollar value on how much they're going to have to pay him out.
You don't think... here's how you'll know if he's going to get fired, right? Their schedule is Central Michigan, Richmond. That better be 2-0. If that's not, if that's 1-1, his seat is burning. Then it's Washington, Maryland. Maryland's no scrub. Iowa, we both think that's a loss. Iowa's much improved. Rutgers, they get Michigan at home. At this point in time, again, October can change things. I think Michigan's the much better football team. Minnesota, Nebraska, no scrub. At Ohio State, Indiana, and then home against Penn State. He has to be one of the big 3 this year. He has to be 2 of the big 3 this year.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm already looking at 6 losses for them. And
so you got the big 3. You got Ohio State, Michigan,
3.
Penn State. And then I would assume you're throwing Iowa in there. That's 4. Who else you got?
Washington. And then I have them losing to Nebraska. I think they very well, like, out of their, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of their last 4, losing 3 of them.
Yeah. And Indiana might surprise. I mean, probably not because Indiana's bad, but could surprise some people. I mean, who knows if they get hot. I think we both thought when that came down, when that ruling, when that contract extension came down, we both kind of looked at each other and was like, he had one good year with a whole bunch of transfer portal players.
Right.
Kenneth Walker was breaking 5 tackles every time he had the ball against Michigan, and that basically got him a $95 million contract over 10 years. But then if you're Michigan State, if you're flopping, I mean, you had Mark D'Antoni for however long, D'Antonio, whatever his name is, for however long. You go to Mel Tucker, who's the same guy, but who's characteristically the same guy as Mike D'Antonio, and you're expecting different results. Yeah. But yeah. I don't know if there's much any more to say to that, but I also agree with that. Another coach, Jimbo Fisher, will be fired at the end of the season. True or false?
I think that's true. I think the boosters are ready. I think the fans are ready, and he's not living up to the expectation that he is giving himself. I mean, the only thing I think that keeps him with his job is the fact that he beats Alabama like every other year. But they haven't even come close to an SEC championship. And I mean, yeah, your recruiting's good, but then like after the first 3 weeks, like everyone just decommits.
All right, so here's the better question. True or false? A&M fires Jimbo before the Tennessee game. Here are the games leading up to it. New Mexico, Miami, Louisiana Monroe, Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama.
I'm going to say false, because I think what they'll do is they'll let it ride till the end of the year.
Or do they give it one more? So let's say they lose to Alabama. Let's say they have, after Alabama, they have 2 losses, right? So they're out of the CFP. Tennessee, pick one way or the other. My guess is they lose to Tennessee because Alabama has a hangover both before and after, right? You're getting ready for them before. So I think they lose the Arkansas game, the Miami game, the Arkansas game. So that's 2. They lose Alabama, and then Tennessee can go either way. So they're looking at a potential 3 or 4 losses. Then it's the bye week before South Carolina comes calling. I think that's when they do it.
Yeah, I mean they could do that in the second half of the season, because I think if they lose to Alabama, then it's kind of like, okay, we didn't really expect you to beat Alabama as it was, because it's Alabama. But then, but we do expect you to beat like Tennessee. And then, even if they don't do it on that bye week and then they go and they play South Carolina and they lose to South Carolina,
right?
I mean, it's either second half of the season or the end of the season. I think he's getting canned.
Yeah, I mean, he has to finish the season with, I think, 2 or less losses to even sniff his job,
right,
to even be able to keep his job. The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame will be in the college football playoff conversation in late November. Navy, Tennessee State, North Carolina State, Central Michigan, Ohio State at home, Duke, Louisville, USC at home, Pittsburgh, Clemson on the road, Wake Forest, Stanford.
Towards the end of the season, I think true they will be, but they'll be sitting at that 9-8 position, and because I don't think that they're the fact that they're not going to have a conference championship is really going to hurt them. And it's like, other than Clemson and Ohio State, their schedule's not that great.
It's not. You're right. So I think it really comes down to so Wake Forest and Stanford. I just don't think they're going to have enough between those last 2 weeks, as you said, sitting at 8 and 9, to make moves after that. Like, I think their losses come before, like, to Ohio State, to Clemson, but, like, before early in their schedule, to where people will forget about the early season losses or justify them, as we kind of do, as teams get better or worse as the season goes on. But they won't have enough between Wake Forest and Stanford, who are probably going to be pretty bad, both of them, to not have enough to make it in. Okay, let's go to the next question. Winding down here. South Carolina will win 10-plus games this year. North Carolina, Furman, Georgia on the road. Mississippi State, Tennessee on the road. Florida at home. Missouri, A&M on the road. Jackson State University, that is a Conference USA team. Just so you know, it's not an FCS team, so props to them. They weren't when they scheduled it, I guarantee you. Vanderbilt, Kentucky at home, and then Clemson at home as well. Brutal schedule.
I think that it's false, and I think they're going to lose 4 games.
Point them out.
I think it's going to end up being, they're playing at Georgia. I'm going to give Georgia the benefit, and I think Georgia's going to win that one. Probably the 2 toughest ones back to back. You're going to get Tennessee and Florida.
Oh.
And then probably that end of the year game against Clemson. If Clemson's riding high, I think they're going to get that one.
I'm going to actually say true. I say they go 10-3 with a real chance riding into their last conference game against Kentucky with a chance to make the SEC championship game. I don't think they will. I think by that point, because I didn't know how rough their schedule was, I think that North Carolina could get them and Georgia will get them early. But then after that, they'll probably get Tennessee. And you're right, they could drop that game to Florida. But as you said, that 28th game against A&M, I don't even think Jimbo will be there by that point.
Right.
And then Clemson might. It'll be interesting. South Carolina is one of those teams that could go either way. Spencer Rattler, if they play well, is going to be Heisman winner. If they don't play well, it's who South Carolina is. I mean, South Carolina is a perpetual, 8-5 team, and every few years they have a good 10, 11 win team. All right, I got to pull up one more thing, and then we'll get to the final question of the true or false segment, and then we will close it out. TCU, the college football playoff runner-up last year, will finish the season with 5+ losses. Schedule is Colorado, Nicholls State, Houston, SMU, West Virginia, Iowa State, BYU. Those are all conference games. Kansas State, Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma.
I'm going to say false. I don't think they lose 5. I think they lose maybe 3 or 4. I could see them losing to Colorado just because there's all that emotion behind that game.
Yeah. I think I talked you into that one.
Yeah. I think they lose to Texas. I think they lose to Oklahoma. So, I mean, does Iowa State kind of snag them? Because at Iowa State, that's probably going to be like a weird 4:30, 3:30 game. So I could see them at 3 or 4 losses.
I'm actually going to say true. I think Colorado gets them. Then they kind of get back on their feet. I actually think that BYU gets them, who also has a quality program. I think Kansas State gets them again. So that's 3 right there. And then I think their last 3 games, they go 0 for 3. Texas, Baylor, and Oklahoma all get them. So I actually think they go 6-6. Still make a bowl game, but they lost a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
So that ain't bad. Well, that was 21 questions plus some bonus questions in there of true or false with not CFP insider Roberto. Anything else you want to talk about, Robert, before we get out of here?
Not that I can think of, my man.
Alrighty. Well, And then, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you wash your hands because y'all are filthy animals. This will post this Friday. We'll post another episode next week with me and Fancy Trash Can doing much of the same true or false questions as well because he was looking forward to it. So I'm going to run through some questions with him as well. We are inside of 90 days or inside of 100 days, counting down to 90 until college football is back. Until then, stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at 4th and 1 Podcast for all your college football news. Everyone, take care. Peace out. God bless.
Powered by Riverside.